Shalom, shalom, Israel, shalom. It's Brother Raya. I want to give all honor and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh, Bahashim Mashiach, Malak Yahushua. Another strong shalom to all of the mighty brothers that go out there and labor on the highways and byways, making their body living sacrifice. In the rain, the tumults, the demons, the uprises, the uproars, they're out there standing 10 toes down for the name of the Lord. Another strong shalom to all of the mighty brothers that are not out there as of yet, but they're building themselves up, reading, praying, fasting, doing everything they could do to put themselves in a position to shake the hand, to wake up the hopeful elect. Another strong shalom to all of the mighty akwaf in this thing, actually sincerely reverencing their husbands, being teachers of good things to the children at home, being quiet, shamefaced, submissive, loving, steadfast, cooking, sewing, cleaning, doing all of the righteous acts of our foremothers on fire for the Lord. Another strong shalom to all of the mighty akwaf that are not married as of yet, but building themselves up, reading, praying, fasting, being shamefaced, doing everything they could do to magnify the Lord in the ministry. Another strong shalom to all of the mighty children in this thing, abstaining from all lust, concupiscence, and peer pressure, standing 10 toes down for the name of the Lord. And last but not least, another strong shalom to the whole entire nation, making their body living sacrifice, reading, praying, and fasting, doing the work of the Most High God. Right, this is going to be an in-depth breakdown on the table of nations, Ham. You know, we touched on Japhet through the Spirit. You know, we went through his lineage, went through his sons, went through who he is back on the earth. You know, we covered all of that through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. But now we're going to dive into Ham, man. Who is Ham? What are the tribes of Ham? What are the in-depth understandings of who they are in the scriptures? Who are these men back on the earth? Who are the Israelites spread abroad in these diverse countries in this land? How do we all know this through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua? That's what we're going to go and dive into it, man. All right, let me share my screen. And give me a strong con, right? If you can see the screen. Give me a strong con if you can see the screen. All right, we're going to dive straight into it through the Spirit. All right, give me a strong con if you can see the screen. All right, let me get this quick precept. Let's go to the mighty book of Tobit, the 5th chapter. Because it's important to know who you are. If you don't know who you are and the family you come from and the tribes you come from, then you don't know anything about yourself, man. It's the book of Tobit, chapter 5 and verse 10. Then Tobit said unto him, brother, shew me of what tribe and family thou art. Right? So when Tobias was about to go on a journey, Tobit didn't just let his child just do whatever, man. Go with whoever. He had to know who this man was. What's your lineage? What's your fathers? What's your tribe? Who are you, man? Because you could be anybody walking the earth. That's a very important thing, man. In the ancient world, we knew that to a T. When you read the book of Nehemiah, the 7th chapter, Nehemiah, the 10th chapter, all the Chronicles, you understand, First Chronicles chapter 1, all the way till you get up to 11, various other precepts, Genesis, the 10th chapter, you have table of nations. These table of nations, the Lord didn't just put that in there just because. You have Matthew, the 1st chapter, Luke, the 3rd chapter. These are all chapters, precepts, and understanding on who your lineage is, man. You need to know your lineage. And you need to know who your enemy is. Let me get this quick precept. Let's go to the mighty book of Job. It's the book of Job, chapter 8, and verse number 8. And it reads, for inquire, I pray thee, of the former age. So we're commanded by the Most High God to inquire of the former age. Not just your grandfather, but all your fathers, all the way back from the beginning. And prepare thyself to the search of thy fathers. So you have to prepare your search for the search of your fathers, man, to find out who these men are on the earth, man. And it's very wise to know your enemy, to know everything about your enemy. You don't think your enemy knows everything about you? What you like to eat, what you like to drink, that you like to dance, club, that you like to do drugs. You don't think he strategizes you to a T? Know where you put you at and what you like to do on Saturday night, what you like to do and how to manipulate the movies, the TVs, the media, to put gun stores and liquor stores and all type of tobacco on every single corner. You don't think he's strategizing over you, man? Knowing your fathers, how to manipulate you and break you down? And we have to be the same way in righteousness. We have to know these things to a T. Let's go to the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter. It's the book of Genesis, chapter 10, right? And I'm going to start at verse number 5. It says, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided, in their lands, every one after his tongue, and after their families, in their nations. So the Lord, when he divided up the nations, he gave everybody their inheritance. He gave them their own lands, their own tongues. You understand? He gave them their heritage. Now, all of the Gentiles, they have split up. You have the sons. Let me get this quick precept. Right, let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 5 and verse 32. It's the book of Genesis, chapter 5 and verse number 32. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. You have to know about your fathers. You have to know about the table of nations and who these men are walking the earth, man. You got a lot of false charts out here, a lot of false ideologies by men. You have to know how to go into the scriptures for yourself to study yourself approved, man. We come out of Shem. We're a Shemitic people, man. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are our forefathers. Then you have Ham. Ham is the progenitor of the so-called African race. Then you have Japheth. Japheth is your Pacific Islanders. Fiji, right? Samoans, right? Hawaiians, right? All of these different nations, right? They come out of Japheth. And I did an in-depth breakdown on that. If you didn't see it, you know, check out the Cold Cuts channel. We're going to dive straight in to Ham, right? It says the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. Now, when you go into it, the word Cush in the Hebrew, it means black. And those are your Ethiopians. So you have Cush. Cush means black. A lot of people say, well, they're the black face, whatever the case may be. They're the Ethiopians walking the earth. You have Mizraim, which are the Egyptians, which means Egypt. And that's the northeastern corner of Africa. You have Phut, which are your Libyans. And in the Hebrew, that means a bow. Those are your North Africans. You have Canaan, which are symbolic to your Southern Africans today. Right? Let me pull all of that up, right? So you can get a visual through the spirit. Let's pull this up. Right, we're not going to jump the gun. All right, Salaki, bear with me. Right, so you will have your western part of Africa, right here. Salaki, bear with me. You got your western part of Africa, right here. You got your northern part of Africa, or the top region. You have your central part of Africa, right around this region right here. This would be your central part of Africa. Lower parts of Nigeria to Cameroon, all the way to you getting down to the bottom part of Africa, right? The bottom part of Africa from Anatolia, Zimbabwe, all the way down to the tip, right, is Southern Africa. From Madagascar to your right. From around Kenya all the way up to some parts of Eritrea and on up, right, you will have what? Your eastern part of Africa. So Africa split up in these different regions. And these different nations within Africa would determine what part of Africa that you're in. Like I said, you have your northern part of Africa. So you have Cush, which is meaning black. They're your Ethiopians. Now from Eritrea, no, Eritrean may say, I'm not Ethiopian, I'm Eritrean, right? They may say, well, I'm not from Somalia. I'm not this, I'm not that. Well, they coming out of that same region. That's your same father, man. You can't just beat around the bush, man. You're all Ethiopians, right? It says you got Mizraim. Like I said, which are the Egyptians. That's your northern east corner. Now, when you go up here, that's around this region right here, Egypt. Everybody knows about Egypt. You even hear about Egypt in the world. You got Phut, like I said, Libyans, which it means a bow. They're your northern Africans. So all up in this region will be your North Africans from Libya. So if somebody says they're coming up and you're teaching, yeah, I'm from Africa. You come, so, oh, he's a heathen. Well, hold on, brother. We got to find out the matter. Where are you from in Africa? You know, they may say nigger or Niger. They may say Ethiopia. They may say Senegal. They may say the Ivory Coast. They may say Ghana, right? They may say Zimbabwe, right? They may say, God knows what, Madagascar, Kenya, yeah, Uganda, right? Egypt, Morocco. You got to know within these different countries in this continent where those men derived through the spirit of how the Lord breaks it down in the table of nations, where they derive at. Now, just because you may come from Ethiopia doesn't mean you can't be an Israelite. You know, the Lord has spread abroad us throughout the four corners. I'm led to believe there are Israelites all the way in Antarctica somewhere, man, with a hoodie on, bundled up, reading the commandments. So it doesn't matter on a deeper level where you reside and where your landmass is, but you want to use wisdom too, right? So if they say, well, I'm from Libya, you're supposed to automatically know, okay, well, you know, let me read their spirit. But if not, I know exactly where this man comes from. I know exactly who he is. I know what type of spirit he in, and I know his fathers. So let me go back to Genesis, right? It says, verse 6, and the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan, and the sons of Cush. So you have the sons of the Cushites. Now the Cushites, like I said, are your Ethiopians. Now the sons of Cush, it says Sheba. Now Sheba is Ethiopians, and in Hebrew, it means drink thou. So when you go into the word Sheba, it means drink thou. Let's go to the book of Psalms, right? Chapter 72 and verse 10. Let's go into it. It's the book of Psalms. And the Lord breaks this down. You may see key words and what is that? What is that going into? You got to dive into all of these key words. It's not going to always say Israelite. It's not going to always say Hamite. It's not going to always say Cushite. It's not going to always say Japhet or whatever the case may be. You got to know how to dive into the land masses where these nations dwell. That's very important. Right? Let's go to the book of Psalms, right? Chapter 72 and verse number 10. It says, the kings of Tarshish and the owls shall bring presents. The kings of Sheba, right, and Sheba shall offer gifts. Yet all kings shall fall down before him. All nations shall serve him. So on a deeper level, that's talking about Hamashiach wa Malak Yahushua, our king. But it actually did happen on a physical level with Solomon. You understand? The son of David. That actually took place in 1 Kings, the 10th chapter. These Ethiopian women came from abroad and offered gifts to Solomon. Let's get that real fast. Let's go to the book of 1 Kings. It's the book of 1 Kings, chapter 10, in verse number 1. And when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. So, I mean, in the ancient world, when they would say, I'm from Sheba, or I'm from this, they would already know who you are, man. It's a foreign thing now for the names to be covered up and be switched up. That's the so-called white man's trickery. That's the so-called white man's witchcraft. Let me get the book of Job, the 17th chapter. Did not the Lord say he changes night into day? It's the book of Job, chapter 17, verse 12. They changed the night into day. The light is short because of darkness. So who's manipulating all of the world? Changing night into day, day into night, this season into that season, changing the times, the seasons, the ordinances, man's name. Man doesn't even know his own name, man. You can read about that in 1 Esdras, the 3rd chapter. Let me get this real fast. Let me get this quick precept in 1 Esdras, the 3rd chapter. Man doesn't know what's going on. Man is drunk on the earth. You got a lot of Edomites that don't even know what's going on, man. It's the book of 1 Esdras, chapter 3. Right? And I'm going to start at verse number 18. He says, and he saith, thus, O ye men, how exceedingly strong is wine, It calls of all men to air that drink it. And we're not the only ones drinking wine. The so-called white man has had everybody drunk off of his understanding of philosophies. He has the Chinese man wearing a suit. He has the East Indian man shaking the hand. What do they know about these customs that they learned about in America, man? It maketh the mind of the king and of the fatherless child to be all one. What sense does that make for a king's mind and a fatherless child to be all one? They have nothing in common. A king's supposed to sit on the throne and execute judgment with sound doctrine. A fatherless child is wandering around trying to find the reason of things. Of the bondman and of the free man, of the poor and of the rich, it turneth also every thought into jollity and mirth, so that a man, this is the point, remembereth neither sorrow nor death. So when you drink wine and philosophies of this nation, I mean, all you know is mirth, dancing, singing, fun, clubs, violence, gangbanging, being a nigga in the streets, man. All you know is a good time out, 4th of July. All you know is dancing and singing at carnivals and festivals. It says, it maketh every heart rich, so that a man remembereth neither king nor governor. So when you drink of this wine of this nation, you don't remember who your ancient names are. You forget all of that, man. I don't know, man. We're all African. I don't know, man. I'm from the motherland. I'm the indigenous man. I'm the original man. No, I'm an ancient Egyptian. No, brother, you're lost. You're drunk. Even these nations don't even know who they are. A lot of these nations do, right? They can go back, catch a plane or get on sea or whatever case may be, go back to their country. But a lot of these new heathens that are born in this land that have never been back to their countries, they don't really know what's going on either. I'm not talking about that they're East Indian or that they're Arabian, but they're God-given nationality. And a lot of these older heathens, they know exactly who they are. They'll say they're Cush, or they'll say that they're Ishmael. They can proclaim their father. It says, so that a man remembereth neither king nor governor, and it maketh all to speak all things by talents. So the Lord said, when you drunk, you don't remember anything. So when you go back to it, in verse 7, the sons of Cush, Sheba. So Sheba are the Ethiopians. In the Hebrew, it means drink thou. You got Psalm chapter 72 and 10, and let's go to Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 3. Let's go to it real fast. It's the book of Isaiah chapter 43 and verse number 3. And it reads, it says, for I am the Lord thy God, the Holy One of Israel, thy Savior. I gave Egypt for thy ransom, Ethiopia and Sheba for thee. So the Lord's telling you that Ethiopia is Sheba, right? So you have the Ethiopians. Let's go back to the book of Genesis. Now you have Hivilah, right? Going on from the sons of Cush. You got Hivilah. Now Hivilah is Ethiopians as well. It means in the Hebrew circle. It means the word circle. Let's go to Genesis chapter 2 and verse number 11. Let's dive into Hivilah. Let's go to Genesis chapter 2 and verse number 11. And it reads, the name of the first Pison, right? Let me read up a little bit more. I'm going to read verse 8, then I'm going to read on down to 11 the point. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed, right, Adam. And out of the ground made the Lord to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden. So a river splitting out from Eden to water the garden. And from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. These are the 4 heads where this garden split up from. The name of the first, Pison, that is which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. So in Ethiopia, there's gold, man. Now, let me get this quick precept, so like this quick point. Now, I don't know if brothers can see this and sisters can see this. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit more. See if I can zoom out. The brothers can see this. But you have Havilah. Now, right here it says Cush. If brothers could see that. See, I might have to get a bigger picture. I'm not sure if brothers could see this or not. Most high willing you can. Let me see if I can click this and zoom in on it. All right, there we go, all praises. So we know through what we just went into earlier, you have Cush. This is the eastern part of Africa, Ethiopia. Now it says, well, Pison and all of that 4 rivers was split into 4 parts. And then you have Hilvela, right? Where there is gold. So there's gold in Africa. So all of these names have their ancient names. You have to know how to go into them on a map, right? All the way from the time of Genesis. Let me read that again. It says the name of the first Pison, right? That is which compasseth the whole land of Hilvela, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bitumen, Salaki for the pronunciation, and the oxen stone. So when a lot of people, they say, well, Africa is the motherland, and it's so much gold, it's so rich, it's so this, it's so that. Let me go into this real fast, see if I can pour this up. Because a lot of these Africans, they're rich in gold. A lot of these Ethiopians. They have gold mines. Ethiopia is rich in gold. They have all of these things. Check this out. Ethiopia was the origin of the gold treasures of the legendary queen of Sheba. Check that out. So where did Sheba get all her gold from, huh? It was in that land. It was at that landmass. That's how she was able to bring up all of those golds and all of those gifts to give to Solomon in the first place. And Solomon was rich beyond measure. When you read the book of 1 Kings chapter 10 and verse 14 all the way down, he had more gold than any man that ever walked the earth. I believe it said he had $1 billion per year, man, at least in gold alone. He had silver. He had all type of things. It says this: ancient Ethiopia exported gold to Egyptian empires, and today gold goes the biggest gold markets in the world. Check that out. So that's in the Bible. Let me go back to it. It says, compasseth the whole land of Hivia where there is gold, and gold that is a good land. Land is good where there is bitumen and the oxen stone. And the name of the second river is Gophian. The same is that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing all the way down, but just to grab that point out of it. Let's go back to Genesis. So you have Hilvela. Now, going into it a little bit more, let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 6. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse number 6. It's the book of 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 6. And it reads, and Saul said unto the Canaanites, go, depart, get ye down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For ye shewed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. And Saul smote the Amalekites from Hilvela until thou comest into Shur, that is over against Egypt. So he said he smote these Amalekites all the way from Hilvela until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. So when you going into Salakia, let me pull this up, this map. Pull this back up through the spirit. So when he smote these men, hey, men in the ancient world, they were fit for the battle, man. For somebody to chase you down all the way from Hilvela till you get to the landmass of Egypt, those men were warriors, man. So it goes to show you that we were in these regions. We had war in diverse coasts and diverse places. When you go back to the book of when you go back to the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter, it's Genesis chapter 10, verse 7. It says the sons of Cush, Sheba, Hilvela, and Shebeth. Right? So I'm going to go into that name real fast. So Shebeth, which is the Ethiopians, right? Shabbath in the Hebrew. You have Shebetia, right? Which is the Ethiopians, which means striking. Right? It means striking. You have Ramoth, which is Ethiopians as well. It means horses, horse more. They're the father of Sheba and Dedan, Dedan. So when you're going into the rest of these men, right, you got Ramoth, Sheba, Dedan, all of these different men, right? Then you will have Nimrod. So like you have Nimrod, verse number 8. And Cush begat Nimrod, he began to be a mighty one in the earth. Now, when you go into the word Nimrod, he's an Ethiopian also. In the Hebrew, it means rebellion or the valiant mighty hunter. Right? He established the empire in the area of the ancient Babylon, way before you get to Nebuchadnezzar II and Assyria. Right? Let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 11. So these Africans, they're true hunters. Right? They're the Esau before the Esau. And after Esau get chopped down in the kingdom of heaven, who's going to be the top heathen of the earth? Ham. Hey, the Lord said, let me get this quick precept. The Lord said in the book of Ezekiel, I'm going to bring you into the mighty one of the heathen, when he was talking about Nebuchadnezzar. They're the top heathens. They're known when you go into the book of Nahum, right? The 2nd chapter, verse 10 all the way down, right? Various other precepts, right? That they're the lions. Let me get this quick precept. When you go to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 4 and verse 7, they're known as lions. Lions is the top prey, but it's on the left-hand side. It's the book of Ezekiel, chapter 31. And I'm going to start at, let me see where I went. I don't want to read too much in this. I want to get straight to the point. Let me pull this quick precept real fast. I'm going to go to Ezekiel, chapter 31. And I can start at verse number 10, right? And it reads, that's what I want. It says, therefore, thus saith the Lord, because thou hast lifted up thyself in height, and he hath shot up his top among the thick bulbs, and his heart is lifted up in his height, I have therefore delivered him into the hand of the mighty one of the heathen. So yeah, we get on Esau a lot. Esau is the top wickedness of the earth. He's the top heathen created to do all type of mischief and witchcraft and sorcery. But don't forget the Africans, man. The Africans are right under Esau. The Lord hates the Africans. He didn't want us to mingle with them. He don't want us to deal with them. He don't want us to learn their customs. A lot of our law goes back to Egypt, not taking on their customs. Because Egypt is modern day America. It's all over again. But in ancient Egypt, they had a lot of sorcery. And the white man deals heavily with sorcery. Crosses, Shisha Borges, right? Hollywood, and all things to allure you to make you feel like this isn't what you think it is, when it's really death in the valley of the shadow of death, man. It says the mighty one of the heathen. He shall surely deal with him. I have driven him out for his wickedness, man. Check that out. So the Lord also refers to these Africans as what? The mighty one of the heathen. So you got Nimrod. He was a mighty hunter. Now I'm going to get the book of Genesis, the 11th chapter. Let's go to Genesis, the 11th chapter. It's Genesis chapter 11, verse number 1. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech, right? The whole earth in the ancient world, they spoke the Hebrew. That isn't a language that nobody knows about, man. We are the beginning. It says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain. And a lot of these scriptures, when you go into the chapters, they're picking up off of what they were going into the last chapter before that. It says that, so like it, and they said one to another, go, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go, so like it, go to, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. Now that's the mind of the so-called white man. He even does that now. He has planes, satellites, mountaintops. He's trying to climb Mount Everest and dying in emotion. He's the one trying to reach up to heaven. It says, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city. The Lord coming down is the eyes of the angels. They walk to and fro. That was the same eyes that were down there in Sodom and Gomorrah when those two angels were going to find out what was going on in the city. The same eyes in the book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 3. It says, let me prove that real fast. I got a quick precept. I'm gonna go to the book of Zechariah real fast. Let's go to the mighty book of Zechariah. Get a quick precept on that. It's the book of Zechariah, chapter 3. Right, it's the book of Zechariah, chapter 3, and I'm going to start at verse number 9. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon one stone shall be 7 eyes. Now, is that literal? The Lord doesn't have 7 eyes. Who are the eyes of the Lord? The angels. It says, behold, I will graven the gravening thereof, saith the Lord of hosts. I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day. So the Lord is parabolic in the scriptures, which is that stone that has 7 eyes. The eyes of the Lord are the angels that come down upon the city. It says, verse 5, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. That's how you know the Lord doesn't want all nations of people under one mind, one understanding, one religion, one custom, one understanding. The Lord is against that. He gave everyone their own language, their own idols, their own understanding, their own heritage. They keep themselves by. Go to, let us go down, therefore, so like it dare confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. So you had Nimrod, like I said, Nimrod, Ethiopian, which means rebel or a valiant, mighty hunter. And that was during the ancient time of the beginning, right around 2200 to 2154, right, BCE. Right, you also have the sons of Mizraim. We're about to go into it. Right, let me read verse 9 in the book of Genesis, chapter 10, verse 9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Baal, right? And Itrid, and Akkad, and Achim, the land of Shinar, which is the land of confusion, or the land of Babylon. Verse number 11. Out of that land went forth Ashur, and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rabbah, and Calah. Right, Salakia. I'm going to read all the way down. I'm going to just jump to the point till we get to Mizraim, right? We're going to jump to that too. Now, Mizraim, like we went into earlier, those are your Egyptians. Now, the sons of Mizraim, you got Lydian, right, which are the Lydians, right? We're going to touch on it. Mizraim begot Lydian. These are your Lydians, right? In the Hebrew, it means 2 fire bands. So when you go into this, those are your Lydians. And that means 2 fire bands in the ancient Hebrew, right? Or Trevelyan. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 46 and verse 9. And a lot of the latter parts of Jeremiah are going into these ancient Africans in their names. If you wanted to link these things up. Let's go to Jeremiah. Right? Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 46 and verse 9. Right, and it reads. I mean, I could really start up a little bit more, but I'm going to get straight to the point. It says, come up, ye horses, and rage, ye chariots. So when you read Jeremiah, the 49th chapter, you know, when you're going into it, it's going into the battle of Carchemish, right, against Egypt, the army of Pharaoh Necho, right, Nebuchadnezzar II, and Babylon, the 4th year of Joachim. We could go into it, but jumping all the way down, it says, come up, ye horses, rage, ye chariots. Come, let the mighty men come forth, the Ethiopians and the Libyans. that handle the shield, and the Lydians that handle and bent the bow. Right? So you can read about them, like I said, in Jeremiah, the 46th chapter. And may change up their names somewhat, maybe of their sons, the time. It says this: Firebands and Trevelyan. You have his next son when you go into it. Salaki for the pronunciation. Arinum. They're the Egyptians also. And in the Hebrew means affliction of waters. You have his next son, Lehabium, Egyptian as well. And the Hebrew means flames. The next one you have Nephuthium. Those are the Egyptians. That means opening. Now, every one of these sons are not in the scriptures to where we could pull precepts specifically on something that they were going through. You always have a chief out of your tribes of your nation. Like your men of Teman, your Amalekat. There will be your chief ones out of Esau, the men of renown. You got Pethrism. Those are your Egyptians. Regions of the south. Pathros. At Egypt, right? Let me get this quick precept in Ezekiel chapter 29 and 14. Right, like I said, Ezekiel chapter 29 and 14. 29 and 14. And it reads, it says, I will bring again the captivity of Egypt, and I will cause them to return into the land of Pathros, and to the land of their habitation, and they shall be there a base kingdom. That's plain, man. Lord said you're going to be there at base kingdom. When you read Ezekiel 29, you know, all these parts of Ezekiel and parts of Jeremiah, a lot of them are going into the ancient Africans, right? Now, when you go into it, let me go back to it. I'm going to get through these names, right? Given the Hebrew. You got Keslium or Caslahim. Those are the Egyptians also, right? In Hebrew means fortified. They're the progenitors of the Philistines, which is the Philistines. In the book of 1 Samuel, right, the 17th chapter, verse 4 all the way down. Out of Casluhim came these men. Let's go to the book of 1 Samuel. Let's prove that. Right, it's the book of 1 Samuel, right? Chapter 17, verse 4. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath, and Goth, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. It says, and he had on his helmet of brass, and upon his head he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. So these ancient Africans, like we're going to keep going into, these men are really warriors, man. Now they have nothing to do, or they have nothing to add up to even close to us. We don't want to be fools too, man. Their beginnings are warriors. These are your ancient bushmen, the one that wait in the bushes with those sticks and those staffs that go out and hunt, man. They're actually hunters, right? Like all the Ethiopians, they're hunters. From Nimrod on out, you have the Egyptians. Those men are actual, for lack of better terms, warriors. Now, a lot of them are homosexuals. When you go into the hieroglyphs and you go into the history and a lot of their customs and the things that they were doing, right? You got the god of Gib, right? You got the Ux stone and all of these different things and the emblems. And when you go into their understanding, it's off. It's wicked. That's another breakdown, right? So in the Hebrew, that means a crown, right? The Cynthians inhabited of Kepiar, the distinct from the Philistines, right? So let's go to the sons of Salakia, the sons of Canaan. Now you got the sons of Canaan. Now the sons of Canaan are your South Africans. Now his sons, you got Sidon, which is an ancient Phoenician city of the Mediterranean coast of northern of Tyre. So I know you heard in the scripture, you got Tyre, you got Zidon. You want to go into these ancient names and link that up. In the Hebrew, Sidon, it means honey. So you got the sons of Heth, which are the Canaanites. Next, you got Heth. Now, in the Hebrew, it means terror. They're the progenitor of the Hittites that you can read about in Genesis chapter 23 and verse number 10. The sons of Heth, the ones that Abraham was around. Let's go to the book that he bought the land from. So we always dwelt amongst the Africans, man. In Joshua, the 9th chapter, right, we fumbled the ball and made a league, right? As Saul slew the Gibeonites in the zeal, right? We all from the very beginning, right? In Genesis, the 3rd chapter, that serpent, that ancient African seed, right? And that's twofold. Could really get real deep into it. And most are willing, that's going to be another breakdown coming from. But you had the ancient spirit of Tyre. That was in the Genesis. That was in the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, man. So these Africans always dwelt amongst us. Even when we were taking the conquest of Joshua and taking down their lands. From Joshua chapter 15 all the way to the end of the book. We always dwelt around these nations. In Joshua, the 1st chapter, 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter, when the Lord left the remnant of these nations in the land. But I don't want to touch on too much, but I want to get a couple of those accounts that I was talking about. Right, let's go to the book of Genesis, right? Chapter 23 and verse 10. And it reads, and Ekron dwelt among the children of Heth, and Ekron the Hittite answered Abraham in the audience of the children of Heth, even of all that went into that gate of the city, saying, nay, my Lord, here, the field I give thee, and the cave that therein I give it thee. In the presence of the sons of my people, give it thee, bury thy dead. And Abraham bowed down himself before the people of the land, meaning he showed reverence. So Abraham, he always had a league. When you read Genesis, the 14th chapter, right, and various other precepts, he had a league with the inhabitants of the land. Even Jacob said to his sons, you make of my name to stink among the inhabitants of the land, right? So, I mean, we had to dwell amongst these Africans all the way from the beginning. We've been around Africans too long, man. Why do you want to be African? The last thing you should want to be is around these Africans, man. They have taken our nationality and jacked it all up and mixed it in with theirs and had our people to really think that we're Africans. We love it. We lust and covet after being Egyptians. We love their hieroglyphs in their walls. We covet after their customs. Even to this very day, people are in Egyptologists and Egyptology. We got to come out of these things, man. So you have the sons of Heth. Now, you got the Jebusite. Let's go back to it. Reading all the way down from Canaan, you got the Jebusite, you're South African. Now, a Jebusite is a descendant of Jubes, right? Or Jebus. You just go to Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 6. Let's go to Deuteronomy 7 and 6. And before Jerusalem was named Jerusalem, it was named Jebus, because the South Africans and the Jebusites were in that land before we beat them down and dragged them out. There's the book of Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 6. It says, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen to be a special people unto himself above all the people that are above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. Right? It says the Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, but ye were fewest of all the people. So in the ancient time, what happened? We were fewer than all of the people, man. The Africans furthered us out in number than we ever did, man. Let me get that quick precept. Let me go into that. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 11 and verse 23. The Lord called the heathen mightier than us. Not that the heathens were ever mightier than us, but their numbers and their vastness was always more than us before the Lord fulfilled this promise and made us as the sand of the sea. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 11 and verse number 23. Thus will the Lord drive out all these nations from before you. He says, will drive out. So before they got driven out and we beat them down, it says, and ye shall possess greater nations and mightier than yourselves, man. It says, and ye shall possess greater nations and mightier than yourselves. Now, is there nations that are mightier than ourselves? And what nations did we drive out? We drove out the Africans. Does that mean that the Africans are greater than us? When you go into that word mightier in the Hebrew, it means what? Numerous or numbers. Because the numbers and numerous makes you mighty in an army. That's why when Judas Maccabeus and them went to war, the men of the Lord was kind of like, I don't know, should we get out of here? Well, what should we do? Right? Because it's not that those heathens were stronger than us. They're strength in numbers, man. They even tell you that in the movies and cartoons. They even strategize, right? When a king goes to war, okay, I have 10,000 soldiers, but he has, 15,000. Should we really think this through? Now, your soldiers could be 12 times mightier, stronger, right? More valiant, ready to die, been in more wars, had more victories. But that doesn't mean anything, man, because there's strength in numbers. So the Lord even told you that these nations, they're numerous and they were vast. So they always kind of outnumbered us to a certain extent. That's why when you go into the wars in the ancient world in the first 5 books, going into Joshua, how mighty it was for us to destroy them. And when you really go into this, you're like, man, the Lord was with us, man. One of you shall chase 1,000. Like it says in the book of Joshua. Let me get that real fast. Now, that's not literal 1,000. But the Lord, when you kind of go in the spirit, 1,000 is infinite. One, it's the man of the Lord, it's the elect, chasing them, beating them down. But on another fold, you got to understand that it was literally thousands of them, huh? When we went to war. And we still took them down. It says, one man of you shall chase 1,000. For the Lord your God, he is that fighter for you, as he have promised you, man. Because the Lord promised us from old, right, that he would take these nations out and destroy them and beat them down and drag them out for us to possess that land. Let's go to 1 Chronicles chapter 11 and verse 4. Let's go to 1 Chronicles chapter 11 and verse 4. Right, let's go into it. And it reads, and David and all Israel went to Jerusalem, which is Jebus, where the Jebusites were the inhabitants of the land. So before we took those men out of there, it was called Jebus. Before it was called Jerusalem. Let's go to the book of Joshua, the 10th chapter. Let's go to Joshua, the 10th chapter. It's the book of Joshua, chapter 10 and verse 1. Now it came to pass when Adonizek, king of Jerusalem. Now, why is a heathen the king of Jerusalem, huh? Is he the king of Jerusalem? No, he was the king of that landmass. It was called Jerusalem. And had heard how Joshua had taken Ali and had utterly destroyed it, right, as he had done to Jericho and her king. So he had done to Ali and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon, he had made peace with Israel, were among them. Check that out. So these men, they already knew how that war and those breaking these men down was coming. And that train and that army was beating down the inhabitants, taking all of the land. So it's going to show you that these men were in this land before we possessed it. Right? Let's go back to it real fast. Matter of fact, let me get one more. Let's get 2 Samuel chapter 5 and verse 6. Let's get 2 Samuel. Right? Let's get one more. Chapter 5 and verse 6. It's the book of 2 Samuel chapter 5 and verse number 6. It says, and the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in thither. Thinking David cannot come in thither. It says, nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion. Zion is another word of Jerusalem. The same is the city of David. Check that out, man. Right? So let's go back to it. You have the Jebusites. Then you got the Amorite. Now, the Amorite in the Hebrew, it means a sayer. That's the east of Canaan. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 3. The east of Canaan. This is the book of Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse number 3. It says, and say, thus saith the Lord God unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother an Hittite. So the Lord is even saying, right, when you read Ezekiel, that the inhabitants of that land, they always dwelt amongst us. Thy father was whether that was the customs and things we were going into, you could look at it on that fold, and the birth and the beginning of that nativity in the land of Canaan, before we took it, and it was the Holy Land. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother a Hittite. Now, let me get this quick point. Let's go to Amos chapter 2 and verse number 9. Let me pull this up real fast. Let's go to Amos chapter 2 and verse 9. It's the book of Amos chapter 2 and verse 9, and it reads, Yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars. So the Amorites were the giants. They were extremely tall. It says, and he was strong as the oaks, yet I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. So the Lord destroyed the Amorite and removed them out of the land. Also, I brought you up from the land of Egypt and led you 40 years through the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorite. So, like I said, the Amorite, it means a sayer. It's the east of Cain, right? Canaanites. Let's go to the book of Amos. Matter of fact, let's go to Genesis chapter 14 and 13. Because Abraham was confederate with these men. It's Genesis chapter 14 and verse 13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, right? Genesis the 18th chapter. The Amorite, brother of Eshkiel, the brother of Nabner, and these were confederate with Abraham. So even though Abraham dwelt among the heathen, he still had a wise mentality. Daniel was the first black president. When you read Daniel, the 6th chapter, man. 6 and verse 1 all the way down. You had Mordecai. He was presented and promoted unto honor. He had wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. You got to know how to move around these heathens. Right? Abraham. Right? He knew how to move, and he had a confederacy with all of the land. Even our ancient kings, when you go into king, I'm not going to necessarily pull all these accounts. I went straight from the point. But, I mean, a lot of them had leagues with the nations. You can read about that in Joshua. Let me get this quick precept. Even the Romans try to make a league with us when you read the book of First Maccabees, man. Right, let me get this quick point. Let's go to Joshua. This is Joshua. And I'm going to read 9 and 2. It says, let me see, I don't want to read too much. Let me get straight to the point. I'm going to start at 3. It says, when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done unto Jericho and to Ali, or when these heathens heard it, they did work willingly and went and made as if it had been ambassadors and took old sacks upon their asses and wine bottles and rent and bound up and old shoes and cloths upon their feet and old garments upon them, and all the bread upon provision was dry and moldy. And they went to Joshua into the camp of Gilgal and said unto him and to the men of Israel, we be come from a far country, right? They tried to overthrow us. We be come from a far country. Please deal with us. Now, therefore, make ye a league with us. Because who wouldn't want to be with the most strongest army in the world, man? That's why you got NATO, right? You got Sisto. You got the American League. You got the Arab League. You got all of these different leagues of these different men that band together for army and war, right? They're not doing that for fun. They don't even like each other, man. They're just confederate. So when each other call, they all could band together and go to war. So that's not something new. So Abraham was confederate with these men of the land so he could keep his ear to the streets, man. Right, like Jake said. Like you even got police officers, man. They'll play friendly with the men at the liquor store. Yeah, you got it. Just to keep their ear to the street. Just to be confederate, to find out what's going on, man. Right, let's go back to the book of Genesis. Right, it says the Jebusite, right, the Amorite, and then you got the Girgashite. Now the Girgashite, that's Canaanites. It means dwelling on clay soil, dwelling on clay soil. Right, you can read about them in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1. Next, you got the Hivite. Now the Hivite in the Hebrew, it means villages. Right, that's the northern part of Canaan. Let's go to Genesis chapter 34, verse 2. That's your northern part, right, of South Africa. Well, we know the ancient landmass, but today, right, let's go to it. Let's go to Genesis chapter 34. And let's start at verse, let me see what we want. Let's go to verse 2. It says, and when Shechem, the sons of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and laid with her and defiled her, man. So when Dana went out to see the daughters of the land, you know, she was too curious. What did the Lord say? Go to see the daughters of the land. Go see where you want to go and, you know, just let your eyes wander around. She went out from amongst her brethren, man, to dwell in a land in a part where it was nothing but Africans. It says, and Dana, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. Now, she didn't have any wicked intent. But that just goes to show you, when you leave your nest and you leave your dwelling place, you're subject around demons. You know, your daughter or your son could go to the store with his friends, but he done left your protection. Now he's on his own. Now he's wandering around. You could go to the mall. You can go shopping, have intentions, but get overthrown and get jumped at the mall, or XYZ happen. When you're in places where you don't really need to be. It says, and when Shechem, the sons of Hamor, the Hittite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and laid with her and defiled her. And we know what happened when we keep reading, when we jump all the way down to verse 25. Right? It says, and it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, right? These are warriors. Dana's brethren took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. So all of those men, they got slain. Right? Let's go to the mighty book of 1 Kings chapter 9 and verse number 20. Now these Hivites, they're really supposed to be our slaves unto this day when you go into it. Because they really are nothing but slaves. As much as the other heathen are, but I mean on a deeper level, they belonged unto us. Let's go to the book of 1 Kings chapter 9 and verse 20. It says, and all the people that were left of the Amorites. So the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which were not of the children of Israel. The children that were left after them in the land, who the children of Israel also were not able to utterly destroy. And it's not that we wasn't able to utterly destroy them. We were able to utterly destroy them. But the Lord left them a remnant, so that if we went off, that the Lord can raise them up and destroy us with them. You have to understand that these nations are a whooping stick. They're created to give us distress, pain, misery, affliction, oppression, until the time be fulfilled of the Gentiles, that they may truly serve their purpose as slaves and handmaids. It's the book of Judges chapter 3 and verse number 1. Let me get this quick point. It says, now these are the nations which the Lord left. So in one context, it says, let me get this quick point, which were not able of the Shalaki, which were not of the children of Israel, the children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel also were not able to utterly destroy. Now, the only reason why we didn't do that, like I said, is because the Lord left them. And this is the precept. Now, these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel. By them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Cain. Meaning the Lord had another generation raised up that didn't know about war. It wasn't taught about war. You may look at your son right now and be like, man, he ain't nothing like me. We used to play football in the streets. We used to hop fences. We used to be active. We used to play basketball. We boxed. I got my jaw broken before. Snapped it back in place. My arm was broke. I snapped it back in, and I went and did God knows what. But now these children right now, they just want to game all day. right there on their telephones. All they want to do is shop. Right? It's a different spirit they're in. These children of our fathers, they didn't know about war. They didn't know about fighting and the things that their fathers did. So the Lord left these nations in there to beat them down, for practice, like a punching bag. Verse 2, only that the generation of the children of Israel might know to teach them war. That's how much the Lord cared about these nations, that he left them to not destroy them, just so we could beat them down. At the least, such as before knew nothing thereof. Meaning these men didn't know too much about war, so the Lord had to give them a practice. Right? This is the book of 1 Kings, chapter 9 and verse 21 again. The children that were left of them in the land, whom the children of Israel also were not able to destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bond service until this day. So these Africans and these Southern Africans are really supposed to be our slaves until this day. Now, circumstances has happened that we fell as a nation and we went off, but in actuality, these Africans, they're supposed to be our slaves until this very day, man. Let's get a picture of these South Africans, man. Right, he's a slave on the loose. Flat face. Ashy hands. Long neck. Now, this might be somebody's ancient slave on the loose, man. You got to remember, these are ancient fathers. And the inheritance and possession still goes on to this very day. And we're the sons of the prophets. We're the sons of our fathers. So it may be something very well, somebody watching this live. This is just a slave on the loose, man. Ring neck. And when you go into the history of these heathen, why they jump up and down, jump up and down with those sticks. I don't know if brothers know what I'm talking about, sisters know what I'm talking about. These Africans, they jump up and down. That's really to proclaim their manliness. Who can jump the highest? You know, like in the wild and beast, you know, the peacocks, they'll open up their feathers to try to impress the woman. Or a lion, he may roar. Or whatever the case may be. Or this other animal, he may do God knows what to impress the woman. You know, in the heathenistic nations and Ham, they jump up and down. So whoever's the highest jumper and the more athletic is seemingly being the better warrior. And they can mate or take all of the women. So these nations are carnal. They're not looking for a man to have wisdom to lead. A man of understanding. A man that knows Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their fathers in the spirit. That knows how to break down prophecy. Understanding and knowledge and is prudent in discernment. They're not looking at these things. They're saying who has the strongest damn shin calf bone, man. Shin muscles. Who could jump up and down for the carnalest of matters. Right? Let me prove that real fast. Let me see if I could prove that. It says warriors employ a distinctive jumping technique that sets them apart from most athletes. They assume a squatting position, then spring straight upward, relying solely on the power of their leg muscles. Right? Now, I'm not about to get too deep in this. But, I mean, when you diving into it your own, they really have jumping competition. They jump up and down with sticks in their hands, man. They impress the woman. Let's go back to it. So you have the Hivite, right? We just went into that. And then you have, let me go to Joshua chapter 9 verse 22. Let me get one more witness on that Hivite, man. Let's go to Joshua chapter 9 and verse 22. And it reads, it says, and Joshua called for them, and he spake unto them, saying, wherefore have ye beguiled us, saying, we are very far from you, when ye dwelt among us? Right? Salakia, bear with me. Reading on. Now therefore ye are cursed, and there shall none of you be free from being bondmen and hewers of the wood and drawers of the waters for the house of my God. So they're really never supposed to be free. To this very day, you're supposed to be possessing one of these Canaanites right now, man. To this very day. And that's from the Most High God, and the curse from the very beginning, in the time of Joshua. Right? Let me read that again. Now therefore ye are cursed. So the Africans are cursed, and therefore shall none of you be free from being bondmen and hewers of the wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. Check that out, man. So you have the Archite. Now the Archite means garn in the Hebrew. Garn. You have snipe, or the Snaite. That's Canaanite, which means thorn of clay, or thorn or clay. You have the Arvadite. It's a Canaanite. It means I shall break loose in the ancient Hebrew. You have Zemarite. That means double willing. Double willing. Right? You also have the Hamathite, which is Hamath in the scriptures. So you may not see the Ite, which is all of their tribes, you know, and their men and their descendants. You may just see Hamath in the scriptures. Right? When you go into it. But let me pull this up. Now, a lot of men may ask, you know, well, how do we know what nations are where, and, you know, how Israel could be, you know, mixed in with these different nations? Let me get Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 11, and I want to go into it. So identifying Israel in these diverse places and Ham, you know, we're about to dive into that through the Spirit. Because all of these nations, right, everybody isn't a heathen in Africa. You have some Israelites in Africa. It's the book of Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 11. And it came to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, right? Elam and Shinar, from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the isles of the sea. So from the four corners of the earth. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So it's going to be the four corners where the Lord's going to grab up, you understand, his people. Right? Now, let me bring this out. Now, you have much nations. Let me read this. Many nations such as the Bano state of Ashanti. So you have a tribe in Africa called Ashanti. Now, Ashanti go back to the Israelites. A lot of these men are Jews, because you have to understand that we fled into the west part of Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution from 66 to 70 AD, the Jewish-Roman wars. Let's go to the book of Luke chapter 21 and verse number 20. Let's go to it. This is the book of Luke chapter 21 and verse number 20. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, those are the Romans. They compassed us with armies. You can read about that in the book of Daniel, the 9th chapter. Daniel prophesied about that they would come in. Let me get that real fast. It's the book of Daniel, chapter 9 and verse, straight to the point, 26. After 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince. The people of the prince are the Romans. The prince is the spiritual demon Satan. They're the people of the prince. He's the prince of principalities on the left-hand side. He's not the king, but he's known as the prince. You can read about that in John chapter 16, verse 11. Let me get a quick precept, right? And sometimes you need 5 precepts to explain one precept. It's just the spirit of the Most High. Right, let me get this real fast. Let's go to John chapter 16 and 11. It says, of judgment, because the prince of this world is judged. Check that out, man. He's cast out. So the prince over principalities is the spiritual demon Satan. Now it says the people of the prince shall come and shall destroy the city, right? Jerusalem and the sanctuary, our temple, and the end thereof shall be with the flood, meaning utter massacre and destruction. And until the end of the war's desolations are determined, because that was the abomination of desolation. So who is it talking about? It's talking about the Romans. The Romans came in. That's why we got compassed with armies. Then know that the desolation thereof is not. Then, Salakia, let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. Because there was a vast amount of Roman persecution going on around this time. When you go all the way to the time when you get the Revelations, the 90 to 95 AD, they were still doing it. And it was even worse, and it was growing. Those Roman persecutions. They killed all of the 12, but John. A lot of these men got tortured. It says, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Right? And I'm not going to read all the way down, but I'm going to get this quick point. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there should be great distress in the land, and wrath upon his people. This is twofold. It's going into the days that have happened and the days that are for to come in the future. Now, going back to it, like I said, let me get this quick point. So, like, you bear with me. You got the Ashanti. That will be one of your tribes in Africa that are Israelites, to present day Ghana. Now, parts of Ghana are the Israelites as well. And you have something called Yerbia, present day Nigeria. So just because somebody says they're Nigerian, yeah, you want to try the spirit, no matter who it is. You want to try the spirit. You don't want to be a fool, though. They're sitting up with a Confederate flag on and chewing tobacco with the bluest of eyes. And they say, what are you doing around these parts? You don't want to say, well, I got to try the spirit. Maybe he had a long day. That's why he's chewing the tobacco. Maybe he didn't know, where else to get a shirt from. He doesn't know what it means. Maybe his hat, and he's kind of wearing it with his sloppy hair coming out the side. Well, maybe it's a bad hair day. No, you don't want to be a fool too, but you want to know where these men and these tribes come out of. So you got the Yerbia, that's in Nigeria. They were involved in slave trading groups as such as the Mbalinga and Anatolia, right? I just wanted that quick point, Ashanti and Yerbia. Now, you also have, in the 19th century, at least half of the population was enslaved among the Dulia of the Cameroon. So let's pull this up to give a visual, right? We had Nigeria. Now, I believe the lower parts of Nigeria is where the slave trade happened. Not all of Nigeria, because Nigeria is big. I know this looks like a little small block right here, but it's actually big. But we have to understand Cameroon, that's around the central part of Africa. So from Cameroon, where is that? Okay. Dula of Cameroon and other peoples of lower Nigeria, like I just went into. Because Nigeria is big, but the lower part was what? Around the western and central part of Africa, where those slave trade ships came. They came right around this coast, right around this region. But everybody's not classified as just a Nigerian. That's why they have tribes within Africa. Let me get this quick question real fast. So there's so-called 54, or some would say 55 countries in Africa. How many tribes are in Africa? It's over 3,000 tribes. Over 3,000 tribes in Africa. So everybody may not classify themselves specifically as that landmass. It kind of gets deeper and deeper. Yeah, you're from Israel, but I mean, you may be from Galilee, maybe from Judea, maybe from Samaria, whatever the case may be. So going back to it, Salaki, bear with me. Right? You have Dulia, and you have Congo, and the Kasenin, Salaki for the pronunciation, Case Senjing Kingdom of Chowi of Anatolia, and among Ashanti, as we just went into, and Yerbia. So you got Anatolia. Now when you go into the right here is Anatolia, going right around the same. That's how we believe what it is saying. It's not like it's the Dominican. It's like a Democrat Republic of the Congo, right in the middle, or Central African Republic, or Sudan. It's right around the same coast where we was dragged up in slavery. The lower part of Nigeria and Anatolia, right? Right before you get to Southern Africa where the Canaanites dwell. That's the Central Africa. Right? Salaki, bear with me. Choki of Anatolia. So these are the names of these tribes, of these people. So if a so-called African man come up, so-called African man, he may say, well, you know, I'm from this tribe, I come from this, country of Africa, XYZ. You got to be like, okay, well, if you need to write it down on a notepad, memorize it, whatever the case may be, that would be very wise. Now, here's another tribes that are the Israelites that are classified with these African nations. Going into Anatolia again, which is central part of Africa, right? The Mundu, right? Check this out. The Salaki for the pronunciation. The Munbundu people from Anatolia were amongst the most enslaved Africans, according to the Atlas of the transatlantic slave trade, with most being transported to Brazil. Check that out. So some Jews in Brazil right now, man. So check that tribe out. We just went into this tribe, but we're going to go into it again. The Yerbio, the Yoruba tribe, right? It says, are the ethnic group of southern, western, and north central Nigeria. And they also are one of the Africans' largest ethnic groups. Check that out. You got that tribe. You got the Igbo tribe. Igbo, right? Which is around somewhat of that southern central Nigeria area. At number 3 of most enslaved African tribes. So you got the Igbo. We have the Igbo at the ethnic group of native to present day south central to southeastern Nigeria. The Igbo are another of one of Africa's largest nations, which are also affected by the transatlantic slave trade. So you don't want to write off these men just because they may look African. You may not look 100% Jake, man. Let me see if I can pull something up real fast. Now, you may have a brother, he may look like this. Let me see. Let's pull it up. Or a sister, rather. They may look, somewhat like the Africans. But a lot of our people, like I said, are spread in Africa, man. That's what happened when we were down there for years. We mixed in with the people. And you go into it. Right? That's why it's best to be separate. Not to dwell amongst the inhabitants of the land, man. Because you learn their customs and their religion. And then they wash with urine. They bathe with feces. They jump up and down with sticks. They do all manner of madness. Just because you got wildlife in Africa, you don't just write Africa off. Like, that's just the African people. Like, just because they dance and have naked and have animals around, that's the best nation walking the earth. We're the best nation that's walking the earth, man. Let me get this quick precept. Let me get this quick point. So, like, let me go back to it. Right, you got the Igbo. You got the Bakongo people. Right? The Bakongo people. Right? They were involved in the slave trade as well. These are tribes, and a lot of them are going back to Central Africa. Central, again, is right around this coast right here. So somebody may say, like I said earlier, they're from Morocco, Senegal. You hear a lot of Israelites spread abroad saying from Senegal. You hear that a lot. From the Ivory Coast, right? I'm from Sierra Leone, right here. Or I'm from Ghana, or Togo, Nigeria, Cameroon. We hear that all the time, totally. You don't really hear too much an Egyptian saying that they're an Israelite, or somebody from Etri, or Somalia. So you got the Bakongo people, you got the Fang of Ben in southern Nigeria, right? It says the Fang are the largest ethnic group in Benin and can also be found in parts of southern Nigeria. During the 17th century, a Fang kingdom had been well established, and it was famous for its Dahomey Amazon female warriors, inspiration for Black Panther, Doria, all-female royal guard. Check that out. So it's saying these women that were warriors is what was the inspiration of Black Panther. And they're chasing that African spirit, and they don't even understand that those women and those people that they're imaging after were probably Israelites, man. Just because they were in that land and they may mixed in a couple of with a little bit of their customs, who's the strongest warriors on the earth? The Israelites. We are. We're the strongest soldiers. Our women are the strongest in everything that they do. Check that out. Right, you have the Menti tribe. Also, you have the Menti tribe. The Menti or Mendi people are a collection of an ethnic group all over West Africa that speak the Mendi language, with the most widely recognized Mendi speaking nation being Menkanika nation. That's the western part. Right? You also got the full Naya ethnic group of Western Africa. Right? That's a tribe. You got the Ebron people, the Wolof of Senegal, right? In Gambia. So take this site down, take these tribes down, go into the history, pause, write this down, the Hebrew words for all of these African names, and link them up to who they are today. We went and showed you on a map where these African tribes reside. You got the Chambia tribe, which is also in Nigeria. So a lot of the so-called Africans that were taken in slavery were around those same countries, in those same tribes. And what do they do after years and years and years? They populate. They grow vast, more and more and more. It only takes one Israelite man and one heathenistic woman for hundreds of years later to have a lot of kids that are going to look different. They're not going to look like your modern day Kimbo Slice, man, Wesley Snipes, Samuel L. Jackson. They're not going to look like that. They're going to come in different shapes, in different sizes, different forms, different skin complexions. So you have the border of the Canaanites. So around the border of Canaan, leaving off from where we were going into, right, we touched on Ethiopians, the Egyptians, right, the Libyans, and now we're on Canaan. Right now, the borders of Canaan, you got Gibeah. In the Hebrew, that's a lodging place. That's a town of the Philistines in south of Gaza. Right, that's also the Canaanites, south of Gaza. You got Sodom, like from Sodom and Gomorrah, a Canaanite city located in the area of the Dead Sea. In the Hebrew, Sodom means burning. When you go into the Hebrew, Sodom, that word means burning. You got Gomorrah, like from Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis, the 19th chapter. It's a Canaanite city. In the Hebrew, it means submersion. Right? Let's go to Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 10 and verse 6. Let's go to it. Right? Let's see if we could pull this up. Wisdom of Solomon, right? Chapter 10. And let's go to verse 6, and it reads. It says, when the ungodly perished, she delivered the righteous man who fled from the fire which fell down upon 5 cities. That righteous man is Lot. He was delivered and taken out by the hand of the angels when he tarried long, of whose wickedness even to this day, the wasteland. Because Sodom means burning, and all of those 5 cities that were round about it in like manner were burned. That smoketh is a testimony to the plants bearing fruit that never come to ripeness, and the standing pillar of salt, right, his wife, as a monument of an unbelieving soul. For regarding that wisdom, they got not only this hurt, that they knew not the things which were good, but also left behind them to the world a memorial for their foolishness, so that in the things wherein they offended, they could not so much as be hid. Let's go to the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 12th chapter. Because what do Africans do? They do blood sacrifices. They drink blood. They offer up false, you understand, sacrifices to false gods. This is the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 12. And I'm going to start at verse 3. It says, for it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers both those old inhabitants of the Holy Land. So the Lord destroyed all of those Canaanites and got rid of them. Let me get this quick precept in the book of Deuteronomy. Matter of fact, let's go to Judges, the 1st chapter. Judges, the 1st chapter. And I'm going to start at 4. Well, I'm going to start at 3. And Judah said unto Simon his brother, come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaanites. And I likewise will go with thee into thy lot. So Simeon went with him, and Judah went up, and the Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands, and they slew of them and beseeched 10,000 men. This book is really about war, man. It's about love with the children of Israel. It's about oppression, overcoming your enemies, the latter end, the kingdom of heaven, the promises, the kingdom, you know, everlasting life, dominion, worship, immortal bodies. But it's really a book of the so-called black man against the so-called white man. But under the so-called white man, who's your chief enemy? Who's the man that the Lord is chopping down, chopping off his thumbs, dragging him out the land, having you to inherit what was yours from the beginning, man? Who raped our foremother, man, Diamond? Who done these creep things and took on our heritage and our customs and mixed it all in, and our people are still confused to this day? So don't say, man, hate isn't in the Bible. We shouldn't hate these nations, man. It says, and they found Adonibezek and Bezek, and they fought against him, and they slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But Adonizek fled, and they pursued after him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and his great toes, man. So the Lord did that. The Lord puts it in your spirit to do things. And that was righteous because it was of the Most High God that chop off of his thumbs and chop off his great toes, man. Let me get this quick point. It says in Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 12 and verse 4, whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcraft and wicked sacrifices. So the Africans do sacrifices, man. A lot of people say, well, you know what? That's Levi off, and XYZ. A Levi is lost. Everybody's wicked on a deeper level, but Levi is just lost, man. He's nothing but a priest. He wants to do those sacrifices, but he does it on the left-hand side. Like LeBron James, he's athletic, but he does it for TV, for the so-called white man, for money. When he's really probably a son of a warrior in the ancient world. That's why he could jump so high. The Lord didn't create you to do these things and these feats, to jump over fences and high jump and jump to dunk a basketball, man. We're jumping and doing these feats to actually be warriors, to jump out of trees, to hop over lakes, to bend steel and iron like King David, man. Now, it says, let me look at this real fast. Look at these Africans. These are the most odious works of witchcraft. Blood sacrifices, voodoo, massacre, blood drinking. Don't go to Africa. Don't go get lost in Africa at night, man. Please don't. And then not know the Lord. Skulls, all type of old, ancient, wicked voodoo and sacrifices. Dust on your face, blowing it. You don't know where you are anymore. You're trying to figure out why you're speaking 5 languages. Every other language is a different word. And what do you think we got the understanding in Egypt to be able to make these calves and do these things and have these gods? It was of the ancient Egyptians. It was of the Africans. It was never in our spirit to do that. It's not in your spirit to serve Caesar Borgias and to do these things. It says, whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcraft and wicked sacrifices, and also those merciless murders of children. So when you go to Genesis, like when you go to Leviticus, the 20th chapter, right, Israel got caught in with those ancient Africans and their mindset and the things that they did. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 20. So Leviticus chapter 20 and verse number 2. Again, thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Molech, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. So that wasn't something that was never thought of. People were doing that every day, man. Offering up their children to the spiritual demon Satan. And I will set my face against that man and will cut him off from amongst his people, because he have given his seed unto Molech and defiled my sanctuary to profane my holy name. And if the people of the land do any ways hid their eyes from the man, when he giveth his seed unto Molech, and kill him not, then I will set my face against that man, and against his family will I cut off. The Lord said, look, if you don't kill this man that's offering up wicked sacrifices to the spiritual demon Satan and these entities, then I'm going to set my face against you and your whole family. And I will go, Salakia, and all that go a-whoring after him will commit whoredom with Molech and among their people. So the Lord was against familiar spirits, wizards, whoredom, witchcraft. Read about that in Deuteronomy, the 13th chapter. And the Lord said, if you see somebody trying to seduce you at that city, after you diligently inquire about that city, to go slay all the inhabitants of that city that's working witchcraft and sorcery, man. Let's go back to it. Get this quick point. It says, also those merciless murders of children and devourers of man's flesh and feasts of blood. So they were drinking blood. They were doing all type of witchcraft, man. Now, the 5 cities of Salakia, the 5 cities around about Sodom and Gomorrah, like we were going into, around the Canaanites, you got Sodom, you got Gomorrah, you got Amath, you got Zimbabwe, which is Zorah, and Bela, right? Those are the 5 cities that you can go around. Now let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 18 and verse 20. It's the book of Genesis, chapter 18 and verse number 20. And it reads, and the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous. So there was a lot of homosexuality, a lot of violence in Sodom and Gomorrah. And that literally means burning and emerging, man. To be emerged underground in the dust and ashes, and to burn forevermore as a memorial for an unbelieving soul and a pillar of salt, man. And I will go down and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which has come up unto me, and if not, I will know. But let's go to the mighty book, right, of Deuteronomy 32 and 32. This is Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse number 32. Therefore the children of Israel eat not of the shrine which shrank. So like this is Genesis. It's the book of Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse number 32. And it reads, for their vine is the vine of Sodom, and of the fields of Gomorrah, their grapes are grapes of gall, their clusters are bitter. So the Lord likens, wicked Israel unto what? Sodom and Gomorrah, man. Because we always take on the customs of these different nations and the Africans. It's time to depart from these Africans, their understanding and everything that they moved in, right? So from going into everything that we kind of dived into, I'm going to do a quick recap, right? Now you got west part of Africa, central part of Africa, south part of Africa, east part of Africa, and the north part of Africa. Now, how you know who they are today? Once again, doing a recap. Cush are the Ethiopians, which mean black in the Hebrew. Mizraim are the Egyptians, which is the northeastern corner. You got Put, which are the Libyans, which means abode. They're your North Africans. And you have Canaan, which are your South Africans. Under that umbrella, you have all of the African nations. Going into them all, any Hebrew in their different places, that's how you could kind of diversely jump into their tribes, who these men are today, to that same place, because the Lord gave them the land of Ham. Now, you got Japheth got pushed out of Europe. We got pushed out of Israel. The landmass of Ham, they kind of always stayed intact, like Asia. Certain places kind of always stayed intact. They never was pushed out of their land. Let me get this quick precept. Let me get the book of Psalms, chapter 105 and verse 23. Right? It's the book of Psalms, chapter 105 and verse 23. And it reads, Israel also came into Egypt, right? Came right into Egypt. Because from Israel, it's right here, right off of that coast. And Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. Check that out. And he increased his people greatly and made them stronger than their enemies. That's why they wanted to take us down when we read Exodus, the first chapter. So always understand when you diving into this, that etymology, you understand geography and tribes and nations is very important in understanding the scriptures. So let me get this on quick closing precept. Most High willing, this was edifying through the Spirit. You jotted down it in Hebrew. You know who these men are today. Identifying them on a map. You know how to move. When somebody may ask you a question, a lot of the Israelites that are spread abroad or in Africa, we went through a couple of their different tribes that there are today. The most are willing to take this information, we dive into it a little bit deeper, right, and expound more on the understanding. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 3 and verse number 2. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die. So whatever's ready to die on you, you got to watch that, man. No matter what it is. It could be your reading, your fasting, your praying. Whatever you got going on, you got to strengthen that up. Time you spend with your children, time you spend with the sisters, time you spend with your brothers, whatever the case may be, You got to strengthen that up because something always trying to die daily on you. It says, for I have not found thy works perfect before God. There's always something to work on. Nobody could sit here and say that their works are perfect and they're waiting for the chariots. Remember therefore how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. So if you're not watching and being diligent, the Lord's going to visit you like a thief in the night and blow out your candlestick. So continue to read, pray, and fast, and be diligent, and do all things to magnify the Most High God by Hashem Yahushua. With that, I want to give all honor and glory to the Most High God Yahweh by Hashem Mashiach, Malak Yahushua. Shalom.